Hi, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Mental Health. I'm Nels Kloster. I'm an addiction psychiatrist working in Southern Vermont.
And my name is Robert Stack. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor and a mental health counselor. And I want to welcome everybody to our show. And I just want to say, just in general, last week we did a show on spirituality, and I really enjoyed doing it, and I've gotten good feedback. And I just want to thank everybody for contacting us, and I enjoyed it.
And tonight we'd like to talk about domestic violence. And so we've invited two advocates from the Women's Freedom Center, Don and Kate, with us tonight to talk about this very important topic. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here.
Good, it's nice to have you.
So, want to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Freedom Center, we're the sexual and domestic violence organization in Windham County. And we work with survivors of violence, working toward ending men's violence towards women and their children. We're also a social change organization where we look at the deeper root causes of violence against women and children. So we've been here in the community, upcoming this year for 40 years.
Nice, that's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long, long time. So we're hoping tonight just to give a little bit of information about what's available in our community, especially if you are a survivor of domestic or sexual violence and you're hearing about our work for the first time. We have a 24-hour hotline that you're always welcome to call. Confidentiality is one of the foundations of our work, so that we always say we have confidentiality like a locked vault. We're not going to talk to anybody about the kind or the nature of the calls that come in. So please, if you're listening for the first time tonight, just know that there are advocates available 24/7 to safety plan and offer support.
Right. Again, and we'll be showing information for how to contact the Women's Freedom Center throughout the show. Phone number for the crisis line, and Facebook and the website as well.
Great.
And just before we, just so as not we're excluding anybody, although I think we realized from the statistics that about 85% of domestic violence is men being violent towards women.
That's correct.
But let's not forget, too, that there are women who are the perpetrators as well as men who are often the victims. And I think, as we were talking about before the show, the hotline is available to everybody.
That's
now,
right.
The Women's Freedom Center might focus on the women who are the victims of violence, but calling that number, you will not be excluded and definitely be moved towards resources and help. So for those people who don't sort of meet the population that you're working with, please call, please take advantage, and you will still be helped.
And as you know, the name of the show is about let's have a discussion, and it's really around mental health issues and alcoholism and drug addiction, and that plays a huge role in domestic violence. And that's one of the reasons we include this in our shows, is to really take a look at that, the effect. Not only what the perpetrators do, but what is the effect on the women involved? What is the effect on the children involved? And even more importantly, how do they get better? How do you help them get better? And we were talking about this year, is really trying to focus more on recovery. You know, if you identify the problem, you identify what's the next step? How do people get better? And so I was wondering if you'd talk a little bit about that.
I think to begin with, some of the women that we work with will share with us that they feel that they're experiencing depression and anxiety, perhaps insomnia or post-traumatic stress, but those types of mental health issues are a very natural response to what they're up against in an abusive relationship. You know, batterers will control, manipulate, threaten, intimidate their partners to the point where, you know, it's challenging for women to see clearly through what's even happening at times. And I think, you know, women, when they're fortunate enough to make the decision to leave a relationship or see that out, which women will take multiple times. It's a process. When a woman makes a decision to leave, it's the most vulnerable time for her. It's the most dangerous. 75% of homicides that occur during domestic violence occur once a woman decides to leave the relationship. So fear can keep her in the relationship. But when a woman makes that choice to leave, I feel that's her opportunity to get better. And it's not that she has a problem even to begin with. It's symptomatic to what the abuse is causing in her life.
Now, one of the things I've noticed years ago is that sometimes they often blame themselves for what's happening. And how do you deal with that? I mean, because they sort of take ownership of what's happening to them.
Right.
And it's their fault, and therefore they have to sort of work at it or fix it or anyway.
And I think that is a great place for us to put some energy, because I think part of that dynamic is exacerbated by the fact that as a society we have in many, many ways put the focus on the behavior of victims rather than on the criminal behavior of those who believe that they're entitled to use power and control and coercion to make someone do what they want, primarily an intimate partner. So I think in many ways that chronic reflexive psychologizing of women that we're all pretty familiar with, you know, what is she wearing? Why doesn't she leave? I mean, we could all go down through the questions. Really makes women feel like somehow the responsibility to exit this violent dynamic is on her. And so I love your question about recovery, because really my understanding 21 years into this movement is that we collectively need to come out of denial about what battering is, and we need to figure out a way to get down to the root cause, which is bigger than any one decision that a woman makes to stay or to go. As Kate referenced, it's most dangerous for her to leave. So, you know, when women are living in that situation with their children, they're looking for an exit opportunity. And that becomes a dance between the support and resources available to her in her community and her inner sense of timing about how to leave safely. So, but denial and perhaps a larger societal factor has kept us looking at her behavior and not turning, for the most part, to what motivates predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly men to interact with intimate partners in such a cruel and domineering way, and lethal way, quite frankly.
It gets confusing, I'm sorry. A lot of times when I worked with alcoholic men, and sometimes they would come in and be in the hospital, and they would identify it as being part of their relapse. In other words, they were drinking, they went back, and almost invariably they would say, you know, this person's really a nice person most of the time, or, you know, we've done all right for so long, and then it comes down to this crisis. And I've often seen that it was sort of, a lot of times, not to be sentimental, but it had something to do with love. I mean, they would say, well, I love him, and I want to give him another chance, I want to try again, I don't want to lose our family. And it's almost like trying to figure out, how do you at one point say, no, I can't allow this to happen anymore, and yes, I still love you, and yes, you know, I understand that you don't mean to do this, except blah, blah, blah. I think that's one of the hardest things I've seen, is that over time they feel like they almost they have to give them another chance, or let them back in, or and they do it out of love. I mean, and I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean, they really do. They care about them, and they care about their kids. They care about keeping their home together. And I think it's really a struggle to know, like, well, no, this is not helpful.
Yeah. Well, I imagine too, nobody steps into a full-blown violent relationship.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly.
There's a bit of a process that goes in, or
Correct.
just like there's a process of getting out of it, right?
That's right. And we all often say to, you know, women that come through the door, if an intimate partner behaved that way on a first date, there would never be a second date. And so, you know, it's a process of sort of, and I'm not going to say always intentionally, courting someone, but it, you know, it becomes very apparent to women, for example, when they're pregnant with their first child and they start to feel excited about the possibility of this life, you know, the life growing inside of them. And even that, the attention that a woman might then begin to give the future of her child becomes a source of extreme jealousy and a focal point for her batterer. And so women are often hit in the stomach when they're pregnant. And so You know, yes, is it love? I think women have enormous hearts, and I think it's also very tricky to give up on someone with whom you've had some form of intimacy or with whom you've had a child. And yet, I would say there reaches a point in every woman's life, and often that's when her child is injured or she becomes aware of the interference with the child's development or well-being. At that point, women often figure out that they need to leave, and then it becomes about the safety and the danger.
Yeah, I think you start to draw a broader circle at that point, right? I mean, with the two partners, that's a very sort of intimate dance. And then there are children that are involved and families get involved. And you talk in your viewpoint articles as well. There's a social dynamic, and I even dare say, so a worldwide effect of this. So as that circle seems to expand, that seems to be a point that really gets a lot of women thinking.
Well, I think, I think when women lose their hope, there's a cycle to abuse when it happens. And, there'll be an abusive incident, and oftentimes a batterer right after that will be, asking for forgiveness and promising not to have this happen again. And of course, as Donna spoke, you form a relationship with this person, you're invested, you have children together. You don't want to give up on that. And, I think even recognizing sometimes that you're even in an abusive relationship can be hard to do. You discount the behavior sometimes initially, he had a bad day, or, something happened with his work, and make excuses, but then you begin to recognize that the person you're seeing now is really who he is, and who he presented himself as initially was someone quite different. So then the decisions become how to get out, like you say. And it's hard, there's a lot of obstacles to that. But giving up that hope that there can be change, I think, is when it's kind of the crucial time, I think, when women make the decision to leave, that the behavior is not going to stop.
Sometimes when we're working in the field of alcoholism, sometimes we almost feel like we're trying to stop a generation. We're trying to stop it from passing on to the next generation. They grow up with alcoholism, and they maybe have genetic and social, cultural factors that lead to it, maybe even trauma growing up. Later on, they become just like their father. They almost, the very thing they'll say, I never want to be like them, they turn out to be just like them. And it's just really scary. And I just want to, is some of that come up in your work? I mean, do you see an attempt to stop this generational transfer of this type of behavior? I mean, I don't mean to lump everybody together.
But like sons mimicking the behavior of fathers, daughters, and mothers.
I can even remember they used to say about women sometimes that they would grow up with an alcoholic father, and they would go out and find an alcoholic husband. I mean, that there was something else going on here. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Or even their second husband had the same problems the first one had, and things like that. And like you said earlier in the show, they almost tend to blame the woman for it. Like, you go out and look for that type of person. I mean, I don't know if that's fair or not, but could you speak to that a little bit?
I think it's a bit.
You said earlier, we're focusing on the behavior of the victim as opposed to the behavior of the perpetrator.
And what's true is a perpetrator in his lifetime, left to his own devices and without taking responsibility for his behavior, will most likely have numbers of victims over the course of his life. Because what's true is most women will figure out, if possible, a safe way to exit. It may take time, but once she is gone from that relationship, he is likely to move on and reoffend. And so, if we, again, keep the focus where it needs to be on the criminal and intentional, premeditated power of pattern and control, because we have to keep in mind that most batterers are not randomly committing acts of violence. They're not going into work and beating up their bosses or their coworkers. They're not even going down to the bar and socking their friends. They are perhaps charming and somebody that nobody in his circle would imagine could be treating his intimate partner in such a disrespectful and dangerous way. And so that is part of what women are up against.
And it's not just working class men.
It's not
I mean,
working
you know,
class
sometimes
man.
you
It's
have that
across
image that it's,
every
you know,
socioeconomic,
Yeah.
right. There's really no discrimination. I think what's true is that people with means perhaps have more resources and will not usually enter battered women's shelters. So I think that contributes to the misconception that it's mostly working class or poor people who struggle with issues of domestic violence.
But they are trapped by their economics. I mean, there is
Sure.
some, you know, they have
There's
less
some
choices
reality.
there.
That's
Fewer
right.
choices.
That's right.
Right.
That's
yeah,
right.
I think there was that article in the New York Times this past weekend about
Yeah.
a program down in Yale, and they talk about these adverse childhood events and the way they sort of pile up over time. And their research study there was focused on middle class people, about 17,000 of them. They found out that about 40% of children had some sort of adverse childhood event, and that even 25% of them had even 3 or 4 of these. And I think we saw that too with Freud in Viennese society when he was looking at his theories, how prevalent was sexual abuse at that point.
Yeah.
And it was just shocking. He couldn't really look at that and
Yeah.
believe that that was happening. So that's probably I'd imagine a big piece of this as well, is we just can't believe this.
Right. And I think the sexual abuse is really hard for people to talk about still. And even though, as Kate mentioned, the Women's Freedom Center is a dual program, so we work with both survivors of sexual assault and survivors of domestic violence. And if there's a sexual assault, we have a protocol with the Brattleboro Memorial Hospital where they call an advocate in, and we can provide, if she wants it, some safety planning. But it's still a huge stigma for a woman to come in. She might talk about the beating. She might talk about how, every step that she takes is monitored. He checks the odometer in the car. He has control of the finances. But she will rarely introduce the fact that she has been repeatedly sexually assaulted within the context of her relationship or marriage. That is something that is still incredibly hard for people to talk about, and important that we talk about.
Now, one of the things that used to come up, and I hope you can clear this up for me,
Sure.
is restraining orders by the court.
Yeah.
And that, you can't. And one of the things that I've heard over the years was sometimes it's the victim that will pick up the phone and call. And does that invalidate the restraining order? Does that mean, we don't want that in place? I mean, how come it seems ineffective? Is there a way that it becomes... I guess that's my question. Is it effective when someone calls up and starts a dialogue? Does that mean the restraining order is no longer there? Is it a matter of choice? Can you say that it's over with? Because you pick up the paper that a woman applied for a restraining order and then she was a victim, a horrible victim.
Yeah.
And you think, oh my God, how come that didn't work? Or should other people say, report someone that's violating restraining order?
Good question.
Please tell me more.
Help us do the right thing.
Again, I think the majority of women who seek relief from abuse orders, which is a kind of restraining order against an intimate partner, are not initiating contact. If they're so fortunate as to have the court issue that order, whether it's a temporary or a permanent order or a final order, most plaintiffs are not violating, they're not picking up the phone and initiating contact.
Okay.
It is not illegal for them to do that because there's no order that is monitoring their behavior if they're the plaintiff. It's up to the defendant, the person who has been found to have engaged in criminal behavior, not to have contact with the victim. So I think, again, societally, we may, focus in or hone in on the rare victim who realizes afterwards that she doesn't want that order in place and picks up the phone and initiates contact. But that's not very common. And again, the responsibility is on the defendant to not engage with the plaintiff if she initiates contact. And with regards to your question about whether other people should call, I think that's a great question. I think if any of us in our community witness domestic violence or know about that, the safest way for the victim is to try and intervene in a way that keeps her in the driver's seat of what happens next. So, having contact with somebody, asking if they have support and resources, rather than making the decision to call the police if you know that he's called her, is to say to her, do you feel like you have what you need to make choices? Do you feel safe in those choices? Which isn't to say if you overhear something that sounds like somebody is getting hurt, calling the police seems like a perfectly appropriate thing to do.
Well, I was thinking of neighbors, like friends of the woman, even family members are sometimes aware of this. Oh no, you're not doing that again, or this. Please be careful. I mean, do they have an obligation? I mean, is there a way that they can become part of that process?
Well, I think the woman is the expert in her life, and
Okay.
she knows all the intimate details of what is keeping her safe. And looking from the outside in, we may say it would make the most sense to call the police, but in actuality, she may be put in a vulnerable place because of that, depending if there is or is not an arrest that evening, or, what is going to happen next. So to always keep in mind to let the woman have the control in the situation, be supportive, like Donna had said, but
Yeah,
to
so
let
this
her-
sounds almost like the problem, as we stated in the beginning, is that quite often we're focusing on and or blaming the behavior of the woman, the victim who's involved in this, which we're so used to doing it, I guess.
Correct. And there's a lot of wonderful, wonderful ways for men in this community to plug in as allies of the work. And one of those is, and there's an officer at the Brat PD who has been pretty articulate and pretty vocal about the opportunities for men to talk to one another. For example, if somebody is with a friend and he's texting incessantly his companion 25 times over the course of an hour, where are you, why haven't you responded to me, that's a form of stalking, that unless he's afraid she's been in an auto accident or something has happened to her, it's really inappropriate to have that level of contact. And there are ways that men can enter conversations really productively, really generatively with one another about how to become more respectful as intimate partners and sort of end that addictive cycle of having to know at every single moment what she's doing, who she's with, what she's thinking. To allow that respectful distance to exist between two people seems like a good idea for all of us.
That's great. I mean, just to go back and say that, I remember when it was almost a feminist issue to try and get people to say that you couldn't hit a woman. That, when they originally started the Women's Crisis Center, it was the idea that, it's not allowed. If the police, and it was nice of you to mention that the policemen are now helping and working and actively involved, because I remember there was a day where they felt like, they're not. It wasn't a crime to assault a woman, and we can't get them, and we need your help, and we need your protection, and that was in the beginning. That was a huge issue. It was
Yes.
trying to get everybody, pay attention. And this is a serious issue. In light of that, and I know I asked you before, but if you don't mind, I grew up or knew about the Women's Crisis Center, and that's how I think of you. But you changed your name to the Freedom Center.
Sure did.
And I was wondering if you could say a little bit about why you changed the name and why that's important for us. For all of us to understand.
Well, I think there was considerable thought went into the changing of the name, of course, and we like to think of what women are experiencing in their lives, the crisis that they may be calling us pertaining to, is just a little section of their entire life, that what they're really working towards is freedom, and to take the focus off the crisis and the abuse that's happening and put it towards something that they're trying to achieve. And we've heard a lot of positive feedback from the women with whom we work, and liking that focus. And it just takes the focus off the immediate issue and broadens the perspective on what women are trying to achieve.
Right. I mean, it's great. I like it. I mean, here's the goal. Here's what we're looking
That's
for:
right.
is freedom from abuse. And
That's
freedom,
correct.
and moving away from like calls in a crisis, and we'll get through this little quick.
Absolutely.
Into something else.
And I think 40 years ago, people didn't understand the degree to which women's lives were in crisis because of violence, intimate partner violence, domestic violence. And our foremothers did an incredible job of getting the word out there. They chose the name that was just perfect for that time. And 2 years ago, when we sat in our feminist circle and we really deliberated whether we should change our name, what we realized is we wanted the community to know a couple of things: that women are still having to strive every day for some very basic kinds of freedom. I mean, to be safe in one's home, you would think, is a pretty basic freedom. But the number of women in Windham County, and we serve the entire county, who are not safe in their home still has us working towards freedom. And so we want to get the message out that we've come a long way and we've got a lot of work to continue to do.
And I think too, like we've seen with working with women in these situations, is there's quite a process that gets them into this situation, right? There's the sort of grooming or breaking down of barriers, then there's the isolation from friends, from family, from the community as a whole. So of course then when you reach this crisis point, then there has to be another process in that recovery.
Yes.
I like the way the name of Freedom Center really
That's
sort of
right.
speaks to that longer term
That's right.
process that is necessary.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, it's been wonderful having you on the program. So just to make sure we didn't miss anything, is there anything we've missed? Anything you'd like, sort of closing comments you'd like to make?
I, for one, could talk about this forever, and I think your questions are really thought-provoking. Again, I think what we are trying to do in our community education is to continue to engage. We don't have all the answers. It's very humbling to be 40 years in and still really addressing the root cause of violence against women. But I think our community is bright and full of potential, and I think conversations like this contribute to us getting closer to understanding the nature and the needs of people living with domestic and sexual violence. And I thank you for inviting us to this conversation.
Anything?
Yeah,
Please.
thanks. Well, just, you know, to mention our hotline number, perhaps.
Yes, please.
If anyone is in need of contacting us, our hotline is 802-254-6954. We're also on Facebook as the Women's Freedom Center, and yeah, that's how you can be in touch with us.
Do you mind if I just walk you through this a little bit? If someone picks up the phone and calls you,
Yeah.
there's someone there that answers the phone.
Yes.
Would you mind just briefly, just what are the next steps? What are the possibilities that happens from there on in?
Great question. We always listen for what the woman wants to happen. So rather than having an agenda, we say we meet her where she's at. We meet the caller where they're at. So it's a very quick assessment. What is the most crucial need at the time? Is it safety? Is it to get out? Is it just to have a confidential conversation to identify how she's feeling about the relationship? But it's always where she goes is determined by the caller and by what she wants to have happen, whether that's to stay in the relationship and try and figure out if there's a way to be safer or to exit.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to just briefly say that next week we're going to be talking about PTSD. It will be Veterans Day, and that, as you know, and we'll be talking a little bit about that. And the following week, what we want to do is that this is a program about Let's Talk, and we'd really like to ask people to send in your questions and your comments, and we can have a discussion and try and answer some of these things. You know, we did a group on spirituality. We had Mary Ellen Copeland in here. We talked a little bit about her RAP program. So we really would like to encourage people utilize the Facebook site. Maybe it's a place where people can begin to exchange ideas and thoughts about recovery, and I'm hoping that's going to be happening. Okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, and I think it's been very wonderful having you here tonight. I think, you know, going from this conversation, talking about PTSD next week,
Yes.
you know, we had to, like so many things, I mean, once we start to become more familiar with an issue, with a problem, we start to realize it impacts more people. PTSD, having previously been considered a problem of veterans from war,
Yes.
and then realizing that children with persistent trauma growing up, women in traumatic environments as well, really develop PTSD themselves. I think with the domestic violence too, we've learned the same thing. There's more to this than just inter-partner violence. It's a much larger prevalent issue.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for helping us bring that to people's attention.
Likewise.